I'm Annett Mateo, and I am a professional puppet builder, designer, performer coach. I have been doing this professionally for about 20 years now, about 19 years now. Uh, and it's that has been probably about half and half freelance and half working for official resident theaters. um it ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. The thing that is so exciting and interesting and fascinating to me, and that keeps me excited about doing it, is the balance between the technical and the aesthetic, about being able to take a mechanism that has to do something and making it look cute, or taking some or whatever, making it look aesthetically pleasing, or taking something that's aesthetically pleasing and trying to figure out how to make it move the way that the client wants it to move. There kind of isn't a typical working day, but in the days, there's always checking the emails, because that's where I get a lot of my work from. A lot of my work comes from either referrals or off of my website, people doing searches on, Toto Puppet or whatever, as in from Wizard of Oz, not from the band. And so emails, a lot of it, and keeping contact with clients. I do a lot of my work not locally. I mean, I do a lot of work locally, but I also do a lot of work not locally for, clients all around. So email is a big way that we keep in touch with doing that stuff. So email actually takes quite a bit of time. Also, researching. I have to spend much more time on the computer than I would like to nowadays, that we don't have so many of the small specialty stores around. So researching, where can I find, do they make this thing, and where can I find it if they do, because that's the one thing. It's like for puppet stuff, it's like I use like nothing for its intended purposes. It's like you go into the hardware store and people are like, so I need a thing. And they're like, what are you using it for? And it's like, never mind. Of course, then, a large part of it too is actually, constructing stuff, making, trying to figure out how to problem solve. I either will spend time designing the puppets. People will say, I need a bird. And then I will design it, and be like, how about this? Or like that. And it's like, no, bigger, shorter, smaller. Or they will send me pictures, and then they will have done some design and some work. And then I will have to figure out, interpret, how they want those pictures to actually turn into a 3D thing that does something, and what parts do they want moving. And if they want all those parts moving, how many puppeteers have we got on this, or how many hands are available, or what, do we really want to put all this effort into this particular mechanism or movement or whatever, when it's only going to be on stage or used for just like a second or two or whatever, not very much. Maybe we should put more of our effort into this. So, working with clients to balance that sort of out. And in my head too, as I'm working with, a lot of what I do is like, so is this joint strong enough for what needs to happen here? Is this, do I need to reinforce this to make sure that it's going to last for the run or the use or whatever this, and to ratchet myself back from fixing problems that I don't have yet. It's so easy to be like, oh, I should make sure that this is extra big and extra strong and do this sort of thing. But it's like, ooh, maybe that's not really the right answer for this, because then that adds too much weight for this puppet that's actually not going to be on stage that long or whatever. That sometimes if there's a problem, a potential problem or something, that we can work on, either wait and see what really happens when it's used, or maybe fix it in the back end. And of course, sometimes too, it's like you do your best to come up with all the things. And then when it's used on stage, it's like, oh, I had no idea. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, well, it's not going to work. If, it's like, I didn't build it to do that. So it's pretty much like any other creative process where, you just try and figure out as much about the end use of it as you can, versus, planning ahead. And as a freelance artist, yeah, you're right, time is money. I mean, it's like, you're right, I could spend 5 hours building this perfect thing, but if I can do it in 2, that means that I have, I've made better profit off of this job, and it means I've got 3 hours to do something else. Even when I build the same puppet twice, it's like I will do it differently the second time, just because I will have learned things from doing it the first time, that to improve it, either to make the the puppet ultimately better, or streamline the process, or have found a better material for, something. So it's like, yeah. It's a little, unfortunately, this camera is not that mobile, so I'll just have to point. Right back here, you can sort of see my chair, and right in there, that's there's a design desk in there. So that's where I do my designing, my drawing and stuff like that. That is a bulletin board that usually has a lot more crap on it, but I just cleaned it up. This is, these are shelves full of all sorts of materials. There's some materials, there's some puppets over there. There's some horse head there. That's a snake head. That's a big wasp. That's a bank. It's a piggy bank. It's a brick and mortar bank. I don't know if you can quite see right there. I think that's my drill press, right? Yeah, that's my drill press, and there's a sander right in front of it, and there's a bandsaw right there. So I have this tiny little area. There's a window right there that I can exhaust dust out of, which is great. So I've got, and those are the tools that I use the most. And over here, let's see if I can, oh, you can't really see. Over here is all my hand tools, which is great. The big part here's a little bin with a bunch of, pliers and cutters and things like that. My Dremel bits. I've got all my drill bits, and back in there, which you can't really see, there's a magnetic strip, kind of like right there. This is a magnetic strip that has all of my bits on it. Those are all files down there. So all the, hex bits and Phillips and Robertson bits and all that sort of stuff, they're all right there, and the little holders that are used for them. So they're all right there. There's the power strip that goes to the light that's above the work table. So yeah, so this is all, and then you can't really quite see, but that is my big table that's in the middle of the floor for laying out projects. And I have another table, which you can't quite see, that I can pull out to give myself more space. And I don't know if I can do this. Not really saying, but that's the soft goods room in there. Where's my finger? There it is. It's the soft goods room in there. There's a sewing machine right there, and there's some fabric storage over there and fabric storage around the thing. I don't know if you can see. This is a vaulted ceiling here. There's the wall. So there's a vaulted ceiling here. So that's on the other, in that room. There's a big shelf across here that holds, which is 5 by 12 feet or so. There's a big shelf up there that holds all my flat goods, all my flat foam, mostly is what it is, my big sheets of foam, which is great. There are mostly, I build puppets pretty much out of anything, whatever it's required. And I'll show some of the uses of some of the materials that I've done when I show you some of the examples. But two of the things that I probably keep on stock that is not that usual are sheet foam called either Y20, we call it Y20 up here in the Northwest, but most of the rest of the country calls it L200. Because that's the major supplier in the country has got it. We're just lucky enough to have a big foam maker here in the Northwest. Here we can get this in different stiffnesses. So Y20 is, they actually make a Y20 soft, which is really soft. That's like what you have like in your backpack straps and stuff like that. But this is like Y20 medium, but you can also get in a 30 and a 40, which is like, this is much stiffer. It's really, this is one of those things you kind of have to touch. I can't really show online because especially being thinner, it looks really soft, but this is a much denser foam. I don't know if you can see, and then I can, yeah, you can't really quite see the dent in there. And also another product called Scott foam or reticulated foam. It's sometimes used for outdoor seating or whatever. It's the foam that you can see that's like filters. It's also used for filter material. And it comes in a bunch of, it's the stuff that's got the open cells, the little open holes in it. And it comes from pretty big where you can just run water through it to really fine where it's used for, but it's all open. So it's really great. And it also comes in different stiffnesses of the plastic they use to make it. So it's very versatile in terms of that. So this is Scott foam. And I don't know if can we, yeah, see, can you, how you can see it's kind of open, that open weave in there. So this is one that's about 1/2 inch and is moderately stiff. So those are the two things that I keep on hand for making, for using as basic structure for puppetry. And of course I use, tube foams, common ones, and, insulation ones. And here's a big chunk of super thick upholstery foam that I cut something out of. So I cut this on the bandsaw, which is great, but this is standard upholstery foam. I don't use this a whole lot. This stuff tends to, as you can see, what's already happened, it tends to not be UV stable. So it can tend to break down over time, which is usually not such a deal because like over time for this stuff is like a couple years, a few years. But otherwise, it's a lot of similar type of materials, yeah, Teflon tubing, carbon fiber rods, fiberglass rods, lots of wood carving for handles, for making handles stuff. It totally depends on what it has to do. Obviously, I do use a fair amount of furs, but a lot of puppets don't need fur either. So it doesn't. It completely depends on each puppet what I do. But yes, I do a lot of use a lot of fabric. I once had someone ask me if they could make a puppet without learning how to sew, and it's like, well, sure you can, but boy, if you can sew, it's really, you can do so much more. I mean, it's like you could build a house without learning how to use a saw, but it's going to be a lot easier if you know how to use the tools. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on what you want to do. I've known people who've been able to do everything with just a hot glue gun. So. I actually build almost, it's rare that I build a puppet for myself. I build almost all my puppets for other people to perform, and almost always it's actors. It's rarely that I get to build a puppet for other puppeteers. So yeah, the thing that's tricky about puppetry, and the thing that people kind of don't understand or forget, is that acting in and of itself is a skill, and puppetry is that on top of that. Puppetry is, you have to act through another object. You have to translate your story through this other inanimate object and make it animate and make it believable and make us want to buy into that. It's really challenging. There are people who get it and people who don't, and there are people who can be taught it and people who can't. And sometimes it's just they don't have the skills, and sometimes they don't want the skills. If the story can be told effectively through the puppet, it's going to make everyone look better. It's going to make the story is going to be told better. It's the puppetry is going to be better because it's telling the story better. Overall, the entire production will be better because there weren't distracting elements in there. Like I said, puppetry is also not a natural thing. So using a puppet, sometimes people don't always, when I build a puppet, I build it like, oh, it's going to be held this way, but somebody else grabs it like this, and it's like, oh, okay, if you do it like this, it won't hurt your hand as much, or it won't hurt the puppet as much, or whatever. So yeah, that's another thing too, is to try and make sure that it works physically, works best for the puppeteer and for the puppet itself too. So neither of them get undue wear. I try and get as much information as possible. It's like, how far, if this is a rod, how far does it have to reach? Are they near this? Are they far away from this? Is it going to be, does it have to go up high, or does it have to go down low? Or, yes, where does the puppet going to be in relation to the actor's body when they're actually doing it? Sometimes it's absolutely obvious. But sometimes it's not, and I have in the past had to do things like, okay, just give me that puppet and I'm going to have to go cut a foot off of that rod because you're using it in a completely different way than we all thought it was going to happen. To me, it's an absolute de facto, kind of regardless of what's happening with the puppet, to build it as light as possible. That's just always a bottom line issue. It's like choice of materials, choice of everything is like to try and make it as light as possible, regardless of what kind of puppet it is or how it's being used. Yeah, Dota was a fun thing because that was in the International Gaming Convention. It's a huge, it's the humongous, the largest gaming convention in the world. Anyway, they came up with this great idea. So it happens like they do sports casting, like they do with any other event, and they decided for some reason to just switch out the sportscasters in the middle of doing their thing with Muppets that looked like them. So we, I got together with Valve Corporation, who was in charge of this, and worked on this and planned this well in advance. And then we did it, and it was great. It was so much fun. It was, Valve was spectacular to work with. They were just a bunch of great people. And I was able to hire a bunch of puppeteers, which is always lovely when I have a big enough budget to hire people. It's always the greatest thing. And then they did this thing where the sportscasters, they were at the sports desk. They have this big, huge, fancy sports desk they put up, and which you'll see in the pictures. So what happened is that the puppets were up there and the sportscasters were sitting on the floor behind them, and the puppeteers had to do live lip syncing, which is really challenging, especially since the sportscasters are all joking with each other and, giving each other grief and stuff like that. And so it was a spectacular, they did a great job of it. If you look, Dota the International 6, on YouTube, you can see some, it's fun. And then another big, huge highlight was being able to do Black Beauty at Seattle Children's Theater last season. Spectacular, lovely original production of the classic story. And it was so lovely for me because I got to be part of the creative team from the get-go. From the very first concept of even thinking about this, it was the director, the writer, and me, which never happens for puppet people. So it was so amazing. It was so awesome. So the director, Courtney Sale, the writer, James Still, and me. It's the autobiography of a horse. And it was one of the very first books ever written from an animal's point of view. So this woman wrote this book about things from the point of view of the horses, because a lot of people would really, really abuse their animals back then. And this book was just seminal in its day. And it was the impetus for creating the first Humane Society, and PETA and all of those things. So that's the significance of this particular story, why that story was told. So the book takes place all from the point of view of the horse. So there was many horse puppets involved. So we did some creative things with them. And I was able to do they let me have almost complete aesthetic control over it too. So I was able to do some stuff that I had always wanted to do, such as making the horse out of book pages and maps, and the one out of the strange abaca fiber, and one that looks like upholstery. So it was a spectacular, wonderful thing, and it was really a great cast. And so there were 8 different versions of Black Beauty to portray all the things that horse needed to do. And there were 7 of the full-size horses, right, because there were 2 Merrylegs. And then there was just a whole bunch of other horses of various sizes. There was 9 colts of 3 different, we played with scale a bunch. So there was 3 colts of 3 different scales. So there was 9 of those total, plus, there was, and then of course there was all different styles of puppetry. There was rod puppets, and there was an automata, and there was some large sort of, I don't know, rod puppet hybrid sort of things. So yeah. Let's do some show and tell.
Let's do show and tell.
Here is one, and it's called a rod puppet because the control goes through a rod. So in this one, does this. There we go.
So the hand trigger is flapping the wings?
Yeah, so right. Now here, let me. There we go. So this pulls a string that, hang on a sec.
Adventures in video.
I know.
Video conferencing.
So this has got a piece of elastic in here that pulls them back together. It's a little worn out. This puppet is very old, but so the elastic pulls the wings up, and the string, can you see that?
Yeah.
Here we go. The string, that's what goes back to that handle. And so I pull, this thing is so big. So when I pull it back, that pulls the wings down. And then if I just go up and down like this, that assists with the.
It's a wonderful motion.
Yeah, this one came out really. Though, you know, here's one of those things that you don't even consider. When I built this puppet originally, with this weight up here like this on this rod, all the weight is above the point it kept wanting to do this. It was really quite a challenge to, when I first built these wings, I built them too heavy and it was really hard to hold it up because it kept wanting to fall over because all the weight is above the center. So I had to rebuild the wings and make them super light.
What are they made out of?
They're made out of a light cotton, like a muslin fabric with a little bit of, it's got a super tiny fiberglass rod in here, yeah, in here, and here. And
almost
here.
like a kite.
Yes, it's very, yeah, it's very much like a kite. And the only reason I didn't use kite material was because I needed to paint this. So because I needed to make it look specifically like a moth. So I needed something that could take paint. But, and again, the paint I had to make, you know, use just a little bit of paint, but it ended up working fine. I got it to work. There are more complex puppets like this guy. This is another rod puppet. So he's got, you know, his
Santa.
I'm Santa Cruz. Yeah, dude. Huh? Oh, look at all those people out there. Yeah. So he's got mechanisms that operate. He's got, you know, his hands are on, you can see how his torso rotates around so that his hands can move all the way around. His hands are just on rods. There's nothing fancy about that. It's just string joint there. Oh, look at his skin's falling off. You're peeling, dude. Peeling, Mr. Santa Cruz. And then he's got a mechanism, just gonna slide back here a little bit, that operates the eyes. So that, and then there's another one that operates the mouth. Yeah.
So you design these mechanisms and make them yourself, right?
What was that?
Do you design these mechanisms from scratch, or do you repurpose them from other things that exist already?
Yeah, from scratch every time. This particular puppet is from a class that I took from a fellow who teaches, Jim Krupa, who teaches puppetry design. So this was, and I took it mostly just to see what he did. And I learned some really great ideas about, like the Teflon. I don't know if you can quite see this. Can you sort of see how that orange string goes into the, just a little bit? Yeah, it goes here. Yeah. Hand out of the way. There, now you can see it.
Oh, it's going through a tube.
Right, that's Teflon tubing. That stuff is the best because now there is no friction between here and it having to go up and into the head to do that. There's a spring return in the head that makes the jaw pop back up. So, and because there's no friction, it pulls the control back up too. Sometimes over a longer thing, I'll put a piece of elastic here. Stop your body. Put a piece of elastic here to pull this back as well, you know, so that there isn't, so there's sort of like a double return just to make sure that there's no extra draw or drag on it. But yeah, so this is, you know, this is pretty simple.
So it's a lot about thinking about the properties of your materials and then accounting for that, like knowing that a string is going to get caught on things and it's going to have friction, and then how can you reduce that friction so that you get the motion that you want. And it totally depends on which materials you're working with in any given situation.
Right, and how much room there is for the lever to operate the thing, and you know how long the thing you have to pull is, like, you know, how heavy is the thing you have to move, and it's just like, yeah, exactly how much clearance you've got, if you know,
engineering.
And then once you make this really cool little awesome mechanism, then you have to cover it up and not ruin the mechanism, you know. It's like once you cover it all up and then it gets gummed up with fur or something like that. And it's like, oh, you know. Here's another common one. We all know this. Basically a glorified hand puppet. I mean, a glorified sock puppet. Just like that. This one has got rods on his arms. You can see they're just, turn your hand around. They're just sewn on rods. Nothing fancy. Just some gaff tape wrapped around some rods. But by having the rods on his hands, he can do so much more. Here is a Muppet style head blank, you know, and it's going to have, you know, it'll have a little mouth on it. From here, it's going to get fabric put on it. So here's one that I'm in the process of trying to put the fabric on it. You can sort of see, there's the mouth right there. which I haven't cut out yet. So yeah, so I'm hand, and of course it's all hand sewing on trying to get this thing on here. So that's the first process. And then what happens is it gets, put together in a body like this. This one has an unusual mouth. This mouth is not what you just saw. So this gives you an idea of what it will look like. This particular one is what's going to be a live hands puppet, and that's like the Swedish Chef or whatever, like Ernie or Rolf or any of those, where it's going to have, the hands will be and
like human hands in a sleeve.
Right, exactly, the big hands, as opposed to the other one, which will have traditional hands like this. Here's a couple of puppets from James and the Giant Peach. These are this is the little grasshopper. His legs move and his arms move a little bit too. So when he's talking, so you can say, yeah, better watch out for that big old rhino. He's gonna kill those parents.
Is that just a drawer, like a knob for a kitchen drawer on the back of its head that you're holding?
It is. It's right. So, and speaking of not using things for, you can't really see. He's got a little bit of a slip thing, so his head slides up and down. He's got a little bit of a joint there.
What is this puppet made out of?
This is made out of the solid, that Y200, L200 stuff. It's solid. So his whole body is made of this. So this is carved. This is actually it's a yoga block. His head's carved out of a yoga block, and his body is made out of some pieces layered up. This has got some on the inside here. There's a piece of plastic, a solid piece of plastic Sintra that's got the foam on the outside that's carved. So you can see it's a little more round. This is a stiff rod of some sort. I don't even remember what it was. And then the whole thing is covered. I don't know if you can quite see the texture in there. It's covered with cheesecloth, a cheesecloth and a Flex Bond mixture, so that you can see. So it holds it together. So it takes paint and keeps it from. The one thing about L200 is that it does tend to suffer from abrasion and denting. It does have a memory. If it leans on something, it will totally take that dent. It'll totally be dented and take that in. Here.
So you cover it with a cheesecloth, and Flex Bond is like a white glue.
It is. It's like a glue acrylic medium mix, which is really great. It can be used as a paint binder. It's really great stuff. So yeah, and here's another one, the same thing. Total yoga block head. The body is hollow. This body is was formed and is hollow. The little wings that they flap, they stretch a little bit. It's just on a piece of elastic. You can see that they.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, and its legs move too. So yeah, so its head can move around a little bit. They're designed, and these are designed to just be held and operated like this. This is at the very beginning of the James and the Giant Peach, and they have a little bit of interaction with them, but they're not on stage too long. But so this is before they become huge. This kind of the grasshopper and the ladybug, and this one in particular. This one actually has no. This is for a children's story. This one has no. I mean, it is basically a glorified stuffed animal. I mean, there is hardly any anything that's any trickiness to it. And so sometimes this is called an object puppet, just because it doesn't truly have. I'm not sticking my hand in to make it move. There isn't like a little blinky mechanism or anything like that. It is truly just a little, I'm just sticking my hands on it and doing, that sort of thing. So this is a very, basic, but this is still considered a puppet. So it's like, and then this is another style of puppet called Bonraku style. And it operates. So one of the things about it, we can't quite, you can see it's got all, feet and hands. So it's a full body puppet. And the way it operates is it's got a handle up here. Can you see this? In a handle here and one in the back of the feet also. So ideally, in traditional Japanese, you would have three people operating this. There would be somebody on the head and on the right hand, somebody on the feet, and a third person on the left hand.
That's a lot of coordinating between performers.
It's very much coordinating for it. Most Westerners do a modified Banraku style thing where it's just somebody's on the head and then they just go back and forth between that, and then somebody else is on the feet operating. So it's still, even with two people, there's a lot of coordination that happens with that. So
what's that made out of?
This one was just a prototype puppet, so I just slammed it together. It's made out of, it's just covered all in just muslin scraps. It's got a foam ball for the head, something stuck in there. I just took a piece of paper to make a super basic mask. That's all I did for the thing. The hands are just that corrugated plastic, and the feet are just, they are just a piece of paper. This was just designed for a workshop. The legs are the tubes, the insulation tubes that you put around your pipes, the black stuff, the gray, dark gray stuff. So cool. This was just designed for a workshop, a one-time workshop, just to sort of demonstrate the viability of puppetry. This production is not gonna see the light of day, but these puppets are kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you often make like a mock-up or a sample like that before moving on to your for real puppet that you're gonna give to your company or client or performer?
Not generally, just because puppet, it takes as much effort to put together a prototype as it does to do the final thing. I mean, this one is, considering the structure's already built, all that's left to fix it really is just to add some details, like making a carved face or whatever. So it's like it takes as much effort to do this as it does. But I didn't, because I don't usually have much puppetry. I didn't have any puppets like this around. So I needed to pull these together. Now I have a bunch of these around. Find people who do it and pick their brain, and find, have them pick up, ask other people to there's for pretty much anything, there's an organization, some kind of group of people, professional or otherwise, that do it. And I tell you what, it's the people who have been doing it for the longest, it's any kind of skill like this, any kind of craft, any kind of hands-on type of thing. It's easy to be able to use a glue gun and whip something together really quick and, make something really, fun quick. But in order to really master, in order to really get the full set of skills that you need to do, it's like, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to learn that, and to learn it, to do it really well. I mean, you can get really good maybe at certain skills, but in order to truly master your craft, it really does take a long time. They say that in order to be competent in most crafts, that sort of going thing is it's about 10,000 hours, which is about 5 years of full-time work. So that is, to feel like you fully understand your craft and fully understand what it is. So talk to people who've been doing it, ask people who, how they've done it and what they recommend and stuff like that. It's always, there's a lot of information out there, in some of the older people who are, have been doing this for a long time.
Like you.
For instance, don't reinvent the wheel. It's like, save your creativity for once you've figured out how the wheel works, then make it the most cutest, amazing, coolest wheel ever. But don't reinvent how to figure out how to make a wheel. There are colleges out there that have got either puppetry programs or puppetry degrees that you can get. You can actually even get a master's in puppetry at the University of Connecticut. But I did not do any of those. I did not know about that program when I first started doing this, or I might have done that, or something similar. CalArts has had a long-running puppetry program, though it usually tends to go more toward the performance art kind of thing as opposed to traditional puppetry. So, and that's kind of the way you just do it. You meet people. The more you do it, the more you find out where there's people to meet, and then you talk with them, and you're like, "How'd you do that?" I was like, "Can I pick your brain about that?" And then puppeteers in general are very giving people when it comes to wanting to talk about what they've done or what they're doing or what their puppet is or how they made it out of or whatever.